Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up Special Edition. We're on the air today due to NASCAR Coca-Cola 600 being postponed. We're going to cover INDYCAR, Indy 500, F1, then Tuesday, Grid Encore with Ben Schneider will be back on the air. We'll catch up the rest of the regular week with Grid Night on Wednesday. Joe Samaniego here along with Kobe Lambus from the Podium Finish, Ben Schneider, and we have Brandon Crossland from Grid Encore with us today. Very excited to have you there and very excited to have you all tuning in, comment in the chat room with your thoughts, opinions, and questions, especially with all the action today. Big thank you to our Patreon subscribers. Call the show Mark, Robin, and David for investing in the Grid Network. You too can invest in the Grid Network each and every month through Patreon or buy me a coffee where you set the amount, you set the frequency, and you can even buy a cup of coffee for a particular on-air personality. And gentlemen, what a race we had. The 2023 107th run of the Indianapolis 500 was a roller coaster of emotions. Starting with the jubilation of victory, Joseph Newgarden is finally an Indianapolis 500 winner. He took the lead on the final lap, worked his way from 14th starting position, had a fast car all day, and now you could say he's an Indianapolis 500 winner. 19th win for Team Penske at Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Indy 500. And Joseph Newgarden was ecstatic. He jumped in the crowd. He said he'd been dreaming about this. Remember coming here as a kid. Just you could see the emotion in victory lane. 12th attempt at this race. Before today's finish, his best finish was third in 2016 with Ed Carpenter Racing. Brandon, starting with you. Does this complete Joseph Newgarden's legacy as one of the best American-born IndyCar drivers?
It really was one of the last pieces of the puzzle, if you will, for Joseph Newgarden's career. I mean, he could retire right now, and he could go down as one of the greatest of IndyCar and of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Starting with Ed Carpenter Racing in the 2010s, and getting the deal there with the captain. He was given two strict rules. Everyone really at Penske, Team Penske, gets these rules of keeping your job. You have to win an IndyCar. You have to get it Astor Cup. You have to win the championship, and you have to win the Indianapolis 500. That was one thing Joseph had been looking to do for years and years and years, and for some reason or another, and time again, Indy just wasn't very kind to him in the two machine. But after actually, I think it's at 3 championships now, right? 2 championships. Okay. Anyway, he has now won his Indianapolis 500. He's got that ring, drank the milk, and it's all said and done. And he really has completed that part there of being an IndyCar driver who is going to go down as one of the greatest, and the first American to do it in quite a while as well.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add based on what you said, Brandon. You pretty much said it all there. And Joseph Newgarden even said himself that at the end of the day, when you're looking at the overall makeup of your career, people are going to judge you based on whether or not you won the Indy 500 or not. Yeah, Joseph has won a couple of IndyCar championships, and pretty much as I believe I even said this on the pre-race show earlier today, he's pretty much done absolutely everything that there is to do in IndyCar, but win the Indianapolis 500 until today. Now that box is checked. Joseph Newgarden has basically done everything there is to do in IndyCar, and next, the only thing that he's going to have to go out and do for the rest of his career is just continue to keep stacking and adding to his already impressive legacy, and what I believe is one of the greatest American-born IndyCar drivers that we've ever seen. Joseph Newgarden is a really great talent, and he finally got it done at Indy today. So I'm sure there's gonna be a massive party, and it was really nice to see him go up into the stands and celebrate with the fans. I know the fans are very excited. I was really shocked to see Joseph did that, but I'm glad he did, because he gave those fans an incredible memory they'll never forget.
Yeah, guys, with 2 championships, 27 wins, as you see there on the screen, and everything that he's accomplished in his career, now capping it off with an Indy 500 today. If you take, I've got the wins list pulled up right here in front of me. If you take only IRL IndyCar sanctioning from 1996 to the present, Joseph Newgarden has the most wins of an American-born driver by a pretty clear margin. The next most is Sam Hornish Jr. with 19. So as far as I'm concerned, certainly of our generation, he is definitely there as one of the greatest to ever to do it. That was from right here in America. And, like we all said in the pre-race show this morning, this was the last thing that he needed to do in this series and in this sport to win this race. And he finally got the job done today. No, it was a little bit of a controversial finish, but I want to make it very, very clear all my thoughts that I've given on the finish and the thoughts that I'll give here in the next couple of segments has nothing to do with the guy that won the race. I do feel like Marcus Ericsson has the right to be a little bit frustrated with how that played out. But Joseph Newgarden did everything he needed to do. He executed the final restart to absolute perfection and brought it home for the win. You can't ask for much more than that. So he has absolutely established himself. I mean, he already had, even without the Indianapolis 500, with all the wins he's won, all the 2 championships that he's got, he was already there. But this solidifies it and makes it to the point where you can't argue it in any way, shape, or form at this point after today.
Yeah, after today, I think it's pretty clear Joseph Newgarden, one of the best American racers in INDYCAR. Agree with you, being on everything, especially in the INDYCAR IRL era. And just looking back with all his wins, the championships, Indy 500 win now, if people talk about, what's left to do, I know he has tracks he wants to win at, more championships. He has really made a name for himself since joining Penske. Overall, I think Joseph Newgarden, very popular driver. We know he's going to be very excited. This is going to carry him and that team, I think, to a lot of momentum. Second half of the season, which, of course, the championship still on the line. A lot of racing left. The racing win, we saw essentially the finish that left everyone talking. I'll bring Ben and Brandon here. A one-lap shootout determined the 107th Indianapolis 500. It was Marcus Ericsson entering the final lap, but lost it on the backstretch when Joseph Newgarden went on the outside. This is where I think a lot of people have been debating and discussing this way the race finished. Newgarden, he knew coming to that restart, he was in the preferred position. We know a lot of drivers leading at the restart, they're put at a disadvantaged spot. We saw Joseph Newgarden, Pato O'Ward, Marcus Ericsson, in the last restarts, they all lost the lead by another driver. After the race, Marcus Ericsson said he felt it was unfair and dangerous. And many are calling this unprecedented because this is the first time we've seen a one-lap shootout to determine the Indy 500. They just came out of pit road, the backstretch, 3-4, green flag. Ben, did race control make the right call, or did they set a bad precedent for the future?
No and yes. And I'm going to try to remain as calm as I possibly can here. I've kind of lost my voice with how much I've been going off here over the last couple of hours just to people that I was watching the race with. I did a short little IG Live segment, Joe. I know you popped in there as well. But no, I don't think this was the right call. And again, that's not a knock on Joseph Newgarden. He did everything he needed to do. But everybody's talking about how, we got the finish we deserved. The question I would ask is, was the finish really that great? I mean, you said it, Joe. The leader is disadvantaged on the restart. You only had one lap to try to settle this. Marcus Ericsson was kind of a sitting duck there. Joseph Newgarden did what he was expected to do, passed him on the final lap. Ericsson did everything he could to try to get him back. Newgarden zigzagged down the front straightaway to break the draft. He brought it home, and that was the race. It was a pretty predictable ending, I think. So I don't even know. I mean, I guess the whole argument is that it's more exciting, more entertaining than just ending the race under caution. 10 years ago, there was a very popular guy by the name of Tony Kanaan who ran what sounds like is almost certainly going to be his last Indianapolis 500. We never know with TK, but he sounds pretty certain this time. He finally got his Indy 500 win. Not much unlike the feeling that we have for Joseph Newgarden today. One of the most popular drivers in the sport finally wins this race. It ended under caution. I don't recall very many people, maybe Carlos Munoz fans, because Munoz didn't get a shot to get TK back, but I don't recall very many people saying, man, it's great for TK, but this win's illegitimate because it ended under caution. I don't recall very many people in 1998 saying, well, it's great. Dale Earnhardt finally got it done after 20 years of trying, 20 years of frustration, but we got to put the asterisk next to it, man, because it ended under caution. I don't think he really earned this one. Was anybody arguing that before NASCAR decided to implement green, white checkers and overtimes and revamp the system that they have for that? And at least they have a system. I know we'll get into that here for IndyCar in just a moment, but Joe, you bring up Abu Dhabi 2021. This is exactly that scenario here. I don't see a precedent for this. And as a matter of fact, I guess I'll go ahead and bring it up now. I wanted to show this tweet during the next segment, but Aaron Bearden brought out this tweet from an INDYCAR article that came out. And I apologize, my roommate's dog is going off right now. But, he brought out this tweet from 2020 when the race ended under caution for Spencer Pigot's accident. And he said, it's weird how quickly a precedent can change. He cited this INDYCAR article from a statement from the series themselves saying, INDYCAR makes every effort to end races under green, but in this case, following the assessment of the incident, there were too few laps remaining to gather the field behind the pace car, issue a red flag, and then restart. And isn't it funny how quickly the precedent seems to have changed completely unannounced? We didn't know if they were going to red flag the race or not. The booth didn't know if they were going to red flag the race or not. And yet here we are. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows what the rule is, what the precedent is going forward. I think it absolutely sets a dangerous precedent because these are not stock cars. These are we saw it with Kyle Kirkwood, and that red flag was justifiable. That red flag was absolutely justifiable because that was a safety concern. If you're going to throw the red flag, I know Josh has made this argument on the Encore show as well. The red flag has to be reserved for safety only when the track is unsuitable to drive on even at caution pace. And in the case of the last two incidents here, I think if those accidents happen at any other point in the race, we're just going to caution. We're not going to a red flag. We're just going to a yellow flag. They red flagged the race because there weren't enough laps left and the race was going to end under caution. They did it to get a green flag finish. And I'm sorry, that is by definition a gimmick. That's the kind of gimmick that we see in NASCAR. It's the kind of gimmick that I think has frustrated a lot of NASCAR fans over the last several years. Now it seems to have been infiltrating open wheel racing. And in my opinion, it sets a very dangerous precedent going forward that I think a lot of fans aren't going to be a fan of.
Yeah, Ben, and you nail it right on the head there. It's something that's going to be troubling to see go in the future if it stays on this present course, because the red flag lets you know that something really is messed up, something really happened out there. And the incident that was between the 6 and the 27 in turn 2, that definitely was cause for a red flag. That's a no-brainer. You throw it out. But then you look at the incident with a 560, and I'm looking at timing and scoring as we speak. So caution number 4 from lap 193 to 195 was contact with cars 5, 60, and 78 in turn 3, causes another red flag. And then 196 to 198 laps, cars 33 and 55 on the front straight. Both sides of the front stretch there next to the bricks, they have to pass through the middle easily. And if you look back at 2020, like Aaron Bearden is pointing out for us, that probably would have been the end of it at that caution flag there. And I've been on shows with people in the past that strongly disagree about they're all for the green flag finish at all costs philosophy. And Ben, you and I have been very vocal on Grid Live Encore that if a race is going to be 500 miles, then by gone it needs to be 500 miles. You're not going to be 501, 502. And so this improper use of the red flag does concern me, and I try to keep all my biases out of the way. And looking at it from that lens, it really shows that this is not good. And it seems like this has been something that's obviously been picked up from the stock car world and needs to be solved really quickly and not done like that.
And let me be clear, because I was going back and forth with somebody on Twitter about this as well, who said, I don't think you understand what overtime is. When I say NASCAR overtime has infiltrated open wheel racing, I don't mean that in the literal sense that INDYCAR extended the race to get a green flag finish here. What I mean by that is it's the principle of the philosophy of trying to get a green flag finish at all costs. NASCAR has taken the route where they literally extend the race and run extra laps to try to manufacture and guarantee a green flag finish, which, by the way, half the time they don't even get because they wreck on a white flag lap anyway. But that's NASCAR's route to try to get their green flag finish. They add laps onto the race. In open wheel racing, I will give them minimal credit because at the bare minimum, the Indianapolis 500 still ended after 500 miles today. We can be thankful for that. But it's the same philosophy here. You change your race procedure to guarantee a green flag finish. I'm sorry. That is by definition, if you're going to call green, white checkers a gimmick, this is a gimmick here, what we saw today too.
One of the things I feel race control, my opinion, they mishandled is because we saw after that crash on the main straightaway, the cars were coming in between the two cars that were wrecked, as Brandon pointed out. And it looked clear that it was not coming. The announcers from NBC even said they're not reaching for the red flag. And then they were surprised when all of a sudden they were. If this was something where they had really had planned out or something, that red flag should have come out much sooner. So then at least a 2-lap. It just gave me the vibes of Abu Dhabi where, oh, we're going to end under caution. Then all of a sudden, oh, we're going to allow some cars to try to get a 1-lap shootout. That's why I felt really happy today. Just unfortunate because I do think it was mishandled and it does set a bad precedent. Because now we're going to be wondering if we have another scenario like this where it's Iowa, a short oval, Gateway, or a road course like Portland or Detroit next week. If we have a caution flag with 3 laps to go, are we going to say, okay, everyone's going to come in and we're going to have a 1-lap shootout? Is that going to be a realistic expectation to deliver for the fans each and every week? I really am not thrilled. I would even say, in a way, sort of disappointed how this turned out. It's unfortunate. Joseph Newgarden, I think he deserves a win. Nothing against him, but just the way this all played out and race control, it just doesn't leave that great of a feeling. I feel this is the kind of finish similar to 2002 when Helio Castroneves won his second Indy 500 when the yellow came out, and the video of him and Paul Tracy side by side, and people very much thinking about, well, Paul Tracy was from kart. They didn't want a kart driver for him 3rd year in a row. I think this is one of those things where INDYCAR potentially, I think, should look into preventing such a mess like this, because this is the Indy 500, yes. This is the biggest race of the year, yes. You got the biggest crowd, TV you're going to get, but you don't want to have where fans are debating about, was this the right call? Did race control did a good job?
No.
It's just,
you don't want that to be the story.
And the question I would ask is, everybody said, oh, we had 300,000 people show up today. And that's great, by the way. It's great that many people bought a ticket to come to watch the greatest spectacle in racing. If we're making the decisions for how we run our series based on the number of people in the seats, if that's the top thing that guides our decision making, then our priorities are all out of whack. I don't even know what to say to that. You're going to argue that the fans that paid a ticket deserve a green flag finish, and look how many there are. Therefore, we're going to abandon all precedents and run the race to guarantee that happening.
I don't buy that for a moment.
That's asinine to me.
Yeah, I had having a whole month to interact with Indianapolis fans. I think they're going to be fine with a yellow finish because most of them seem to be racing purists, and just the happy-go-lucky folks that are there, they're going to be fine either way. Like you're setting something up I don't think they're really looking to get.
But the more you do it, the more it swings in that direction. Because to Joe's point now, if that happens next weekend in Detroit, like let's say a new IndyCar fan turned this race on today, this was the first race they watched. They don't know a different world now. So when we get if and when we get a crash with 3 to go in Detroit, what are they going to expect to happen? And the more fans that get conditioned to enjoy this,
they're going to go, well, why is it not here?
There you go.
That's exactly it. If they come to Detroit, if they go to Iowa, Portland, and, caution came with 3 laps to go, but the race ends under caution, well, wait a second. Why didn't we get the same priority the Indy 500 did? We know those races don't exactly draw the crowd. It's just something else where I just feel this does set a bad precedent for IndyCar, especially since there is nothing written. The drivers don't know what's going to occur. The NBC commentators don't know what's going to occur. And it seemed like, especially how after that caution, they still did another lap, and then the red flag came out. I really feel race control mishandled this. Yeah. Before we go to the next part, a couple comments in the chat room. Chrome Diesel, weirdest triple day I've seen in a while. F1 Monaco, it rained. Coca-Cola 600 postponed by rain to Monday. At least today's Indy 500 not affected by rain. Adam saying that was a crazy Indy 500. And I would say I felt the end started getting chaotic and crazy, but ever since 2014 when Ryan Hunter-Reay was leading, then a late caution came out and the race was red flag, and people were saying this is unprecedented. We've been seeing a trend. Now Ryan Hunter-Reay did fight off Helio Castroneves to win that race. But here's the thing, since 2014, 10 Indy 500s now.
Yep.
The stats are 8 out of 10 Indy 500s have had a caution with less than 16 laps to go.
There's a stat I was looking for.
Half of the Indy 500s have had a caution with less than 10 laps to go. So the last 10, 5 of them, 10 laps or less, a caution flag. The red flag has been used 3 times, and one of them have finished under the yellow 2022. 2 Indy 500s have ended under caution 2022, and of course 2020, the article you referenced, Ben, where with 4 laps to go, lap 196, caution came out, they didn't restart it. So we are seeing an increase in these late cautions with less than 20 laps to go and the red flag being used, which drivers don't seem to know when it's going to be used for sure. The owners, the team strategies, even the announcers that I mentioned, no clear rules or procedures. The cars, I'm just still amazed. Out of the pit road, hit the backstretch, 3, 4, go. Does INDYCAR need a formal red flag policy where if a caution came out with 16 to 6 laps to go, we know there's a red flag, but once we hit less than 3 laps to go, it's checkered or caution?
Yeah, I do think they need some sort of written down statement here. I don't think this is something you can do. You can just pass off as, oh, we'll do this as a race by race basis kind of thing. No, they need something written down here in the IndyCar rulebook for the red flag, so that we can at least have some consistency as we usually talk about. I'm going to leave Ben with some more time here because I think I've said about all I can say on it.
Yeah, Brandon, I appreciate that. Yeah, well, the formal red flag policy should be what the red flag was always made for, safety reasons. And of course, I don't want to talk too much in circles here. I've already given my thoughts on that. But, if we're going to do this, then yes, there needs to be some sort of policy in place. There needs to be some sort of official precedent. I don't know if we do it by laps, if we're applying it just to the Indianapolis 500 or to the entire calendar. I'm sure the number of laps would change based on location, based on track length and all that. If IndyCar ever went back to Richmond, those laps are less than a third the size of IMS here at 3/4 of a mile to 2.5. So, it would be if we're going to keep doing this, and I hope we don't keep doing this, but I think that ship has probably sailed at this point. If we're going to keep doing this, then yes, there needs to be some sort of official by the books sort of deal in place here. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, the first red flag, absolutely justifiable given the serious nature of a crash. The second red flag, not a huge fan of it, but you know what? If you want to try to ensure that you have a nice, good amount of laps, whatever it is, 5 or 4 to go, where we can get a good, nice little run to the finish, then okay. You get your one shot at it. We'll see what happens. The third red flag, in my mind, completely unjustifiable. There was absolutely no way we could have sat there and looked at this and said, yep, that followed the procedure completely 100% to the books. Because as soon as they pulled out, they were on 2 laps to go and had less than 2 laps to go coming to get the white flag. Normally, you get a full warm-up lap after you've come down pit road to warm up the car and get ready for the restart. They didn't have that. So the pace car pulled straight in. As soon as it pulled off pit road, we got a 1-lap dash. Thankfully, everybody behaved themselves and nobody crashed. But I'm again, not a fan of what happened, obviously. And, I think if we're going to keep doing this, absolutely. You've got to put some sort of rule into place that sets a precedent for what we're going to see going forward.
And you bring up a good point about the pace car. We know after, I believe it was 95 when Jack Villeneuve won the Indy 500 because Scott Goodyear had passed the pace car on the way to the green flag. So that pace car will go in 1 full lap before and everyone will drive around without the safety car in front of them. Here, the safety car was just there, got out of the way as quickly as possible. They, just like how, similar to Abu Dhabi, they manipulated that policy there. I know the red flag is for, serious accidents, incidents. But seeing the trend, knowing that the cars are much more safer, so the drivers get much more aggressive, more willing to take risks because they know more likely they're going to walk out. I would support something where if we said, okay, between lap 16 to 6 to go, the caution came out, we will look at using the red flag to try to minimize and maximize the green flag runs. But once we hit, let's 6 laps to go, so starting with 5 to go, if the caution came out, race is going to end. And I think that would just be great because then the fans will know what to expect, the drivers will know what to expect. And I think the thing too, Marcus Ericsson going for that lead on Joseph Newgarden in the last restart, if he knew that, oh, if a caution comes out, I'm going to be in big trouble if a red flag comes out. If he had known that, I don't think he would have gone for it. He probably think maybe there could be wait till the last lap. That changes the strategy completely, and it's just mind-boggling that this occurred. And here we are after a couple Indy 500s, after what happened in Detroit to Will Power when the red flag came out, which Marcus Ericsson got that win. It just, I'm really hoping, not just IndyCar as well too. We know F1 has been using the red flag more to get more green flag finishes. I'm hoping we start seeing some rules come into place.
Real quick, Joe, you know what else would help? And I brought this up in my live as well. Why don't we space the cars out a little bit more on the restarts? I mean, I'm not sure. I think Pato O'Ward was leading one of them at one point, but the leader has gotten, it's, and we see it in F1 all the time too when we restart from safety cars. You're backing the field up so much and trying to go as late as you possibly can to get a good jump that the field gets so stacked up that they're basically on top of each other. So it makes it exponentially more likely that we're going to see an accident on the restart that just repeats the cycle all over again. If we space the cars out a little bit more and we had that restart with 4 to go instead, maybe they get down to the front stretch cleanly through turns 1 and 2 cleanly, and we're not having this conversation right now. We're maybe having a similar conversation what we had last year and in 2014, but we don't have to throw this complete last-ditch effort out there again because maybe if they'd had a little bit more space, they could have worked with each other a little bit more. I just think sometimes as sanctioning bodies, as series, you have to help the drivers help themselves because, of course, it's the biggest race of the year. You're not going to give an inch when there's less than 10 miles in the Indianapolis 500 to go. But I just think that there are little things that we can look at like that, changing the procedures up a little bit to maybe prevent something like this from happening again without completely sacrificing the integrity of the sporting regulations.
And even before the race was over, the commentators on NBC, they were talking about what if you use that to your advantage? What if you try to jump the start so you can get them to give you a waving finger, like don't do that again. But in effect, you get the thing to finish under yellow. Like you manipulate even their discipline on guys that are trying to jump the restart. I know Pato got stopped for that, and we had to wave off the start there at the end. But that thought crossed my mind too. That might be another addition needed to be added to the rule book.
Indeed, because that's, as you mentioned, Brandon, I was thinking just do what Pato O'Ward did. Bunch up everybody too slow, wave off the restart. Well, wait, this is the last lap. But this is where I think it's race control.
Do they pull a red flag?
Yeah, what did they do? They can't add a lap because then that's overtime. Race control, I feel really mishandled because if Marcus Ericsson did that, normally it's wave off the restart. Well, race is over. Would they have just said, okay, we're just going to let them go? Or worse, I think it would be a really bad call if Marcus Ericsson did jump the gun or bunch up everybody to get an advantage. Do they bring the black flag? That would, I think, just make a big mess of the finish. And yeah, race control, I feel really mishandled this and just really unfortunate because it was a pretty good race. Very happy for Joseph Newgarden. Big win. Reason to celebrate, but just the handling from race control got a lot of people talking on social media. A couple comments. I found it incredibly impressive that INDYCAR managed to set a new attendance record for a NASCAR event.
I sense the sarcasm.
I'm sensing that too. Also hearing Dale Jr. being critical of the finish and hearing Danica justify the finish by calling the drivers entertainers. And that's something I feel I know a lot of professional sports are looking at the entertainment value, making it more exciting. We see this even like NHL hockey, where they got rid of the 2-line rule to get more scores, goalies, less puck handling, minor league baseball with the pitcher's clock to make the game faster.
It's Major League Baseball
Major
too
League
now.
Baseball, bigger
Major League-
bases and pitch clock. Yeah.
I don't follow baseball, but it's just something else. Humperdinck again, when even NASCAR drivers are quenching the finish, you messed it up. And I think it's unfortunate because as I mentioned, 2002, I remember everybody was very critical on that finish. And this is right before social media started really taking off. But whether it was on forums, chat rooms, people were divided. Helio, Paul Tracy, who really won the race. Now, I think a lot of people look back, they don't even talk about that being a controversial finish when you talk about Helio going for number 5. It just still, I think, just it was an unfortunate taste and just one of those Indy 500 finishes we may rather want to forget, but at least for Newgarden, you want to remember.
This is the theory we kind of have on Grid Live Encore is that it's more or less a entire culture shift of people looking for how can we make sport more entertainment like, and they're trying to take little by little pieces of sports and turning them into entertainment products. It's always kind of been there, but just now more than ever, we're seeing more and more of it infiltrate more traditional parts of sports that may be more tedious for some, maybe longer for some, or not really gratifying immediately. But that's just a theory that we seem to have on a weekly basis.
Yeah, well, and that's the argument that I use against the playoff system in NASCAR is, what makes the 1992 Hooters 500 so special is because that played out naturally and organically. You don't see that every year. And when you try to rig the system so that you guarantee that kind of points battle every year, it's not special anymore because to expect it every single year and you're going to get it every single year. Whereas when it happened in 1992, it's considered one of the greatest NASCAR races of all time for more reasons than just that. You had Petty's last race and Gordon's first, but I mean, it's considered one of the greatest championship battles ever because it played out naturally and unexpectedly over a full season. And now we get something like that every year, and you just kind of shrug your shoulders at it because you've rigged the system so that you get it every year. It's not as special anymore.
Yeah, that's the thing. The debate of entertainment sports, making it where there's going to be an exciting finish. Yeah, we know everyone's going to leave. Oh, we were there. There was a last lap pass, but what is this going to do for IndyCar in the future? That's going to be really something we're going to be following, of course, here on the Grid Network. Of course, that was the third red flag, a record. 3 red flags for this race. The first one, as we talked a little bit about, it was that really scary incident when Felix Rosenqvist lost control after getting passed by Joseph Newgarden. He said he hit the wake wrong, hit the wall, then lost control. And then the scariest part was when he clipped the driver, Kyle Kirkwood. Escaped me for a second. Kyle Kirkwood, and you saw that rear tire go over the catch fence. It looked like it was heading to the turn 2 grandstands, and I was just really nervous. And thankfully, once we saw the replays, it missed it. And then we saw it didn't go into the VIP box. Rather, it hit a white car, which, as we've shown on Twitter, Snowball got the damage. Fan did get some special treatment from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But definitely, I think this is something IndyCar is going to be really evaluating, the wheel tether situation for the safety of these cars. But Kobe, I have to ask you, because we know there are wheel tethers on these cars, but these cars are going over 210 miles per hour, lap after lap after lap. Is there a limit where the safety measures are still not there, especially at these speeds?
I mean, we're never going to stop improving on safety. IndyCar deserves a lot of credit for all of the safety enhancements that they made over the years, especially the aero screen. But looking at the wheel tethers, something like that should not happen at all. I'm sure IndyCar is going to take that car and look at it very closely to try to see what went wrong, because that shocked us all, because we thought that safety had made such has advanced so far that we'd never see something like that happen. And then to see the tire flying into the crowd. I actually didn't even know Kyle Kirkwood had flipped over on his lid because I was looking at the tire. I was like, oh my goodness, that doesn't look good. And then here's Kirkwood. I'm like, wow, he actually went over. So I didn't even notice that happened because I was too horrified by seeing the tire go over the fence. So obviously there's something there that IndyCar is going to look at. It would not surprise me if they make some changes moving forward to make sure that a situation like that doesn't happen again. I also want to say we're very thankful that no fan was injured by a flying tire there. And I think Matt Archuleta said it best on Twitter. An angel must have grabbed that tire. Talk about a miracle.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't have too much to add there. Excuse me, kind of losing my voice after how much I've been going off here these last few hours. But I think that, Kobe, you hit the nail right on the head. Obviously, we're never going to stop improving when it comes to safety in the sport. And I think unfortunately a lot of times it takes incidents like this happening for us to recognize areas that we might have missed. I'm thinking back to James Hinchcliffe's scary accident 8 years ago that nearly took his life, and the suspension issues that were put into place for the following year at the Indianapolis 500. We anytime something like this happens, we look at the situation. The aero screen, another example, when we lost Justin Wilson, and the head injuries that have taken some of these great drivers. We introduced a halo in Formula One and other open wheel series. IndyCar's got the aero screen now. Now we have this situation here, and thank God nobody was hurt in this situation, but I'm sure IndyCar will be looking at ways to strengthen the tire tethers and, look at ways to prevent this going forward. My biggest safety concern, I brought it up just a few minutes ago as well, but I think that, the cars are a little bit too bunched together on the restarts. I think that, honestly contributed to Robert Wickens' accident at Pocono, because that happened shortly after a restart when the field was so bunched up. So that's maybe something we can look at as well. But, both things can be true. You can applaud IMS in particular, and IndyCar, generally speaking, for the safety advancements that they've taken and deserve a lot of credit for. But at the same time, you can continue to look at areas that we can continue to improve things. And I can't believe that we don't have safer barriers all the way around the perimeter of IMS yet. For that to be the track where that technology was first implemented, it's very surprising to me that, we have plenty of NASCAR tracks that have the safer barriers all the way around now, but IMS still only has them in the corners. I think that's something that we can look at going forward as well.
It's something I didn't really think about on the straights. Yeah, it just kind of transitions into the safer barrier there in the corners. Kobe, I think my reaction was kind of the opposite of yours. I was looking at Kirkwood first, and then all of a sudden I was, also there was just a wheel that flew off. No big deal. Yeah, big deal. I really wish. Well, I guess I'm thankful not, but I couldn't really see that where the tire went because it just kind of flew off the screen, and it took a while. I think NBC wanted to make sure they knew exactly what happened, and before they started shouting out words. But seeing the replay of a different camera angle, it went between the suites there, special care area at the end of 2 onto the back straight, and so like right between 2 sets of grandstands. Essentially, that was really spooky. The Lord was keeping that tire from going anywhere else other than that car there. But always a class act by I got to give credit there to Doug Bowles, the man there for IMS for taking care of that woman with that car and giving a special treatment and all of that. Always a great job there. But yeah, there's still a long way to go with safety and never really going to reach it.
Yeah, never going to reach it. Always improving, always evolving, and I'm hopeful at least IndyCar can come up with a stronger wheel tether, because that was a really frightening incident, just seeing that. And I saw when the wheel was flying up similar to Kobe, and I was just worried about the words. I still remember Michigan when Adrian Fernandez crashed into the wall. The tire went up, the horrifying incident in Charlotte. Don't want to see anything like that, and thankfully everyone was okay, especially Kyle Kirkwood and Felix Rosenqvist with those hard hits. Those 2 drivers, of course, were disappointing for their race to end. 2 other drivers that were disappointed with their finish, Alex Palou, Ryan SVK. Those 2 were exchanging the lead. I thought it was going to be between those 2, depending on how the race went. But then that first caution for Stingray Robb, Disaster in pit road. Ryan's VK lost control exiting his pits, hit Pillow. Pillow goes into the wall, so both of them had to go to the back. Pillow 28 to fix the damage, work his way to the front, and then VK got a penalty for that contact. Kobe, earlier today on the pre-race show, we were doubtful that Ryan's VK could put together a complete race to contend for the win. Is this the kind of mistake the team looks at as a racing incident and just, okay, it happens, moves on? Or is this one that could put VK's future with Ed Carpenter Racing in jeopardy?
We still going to me first on this one, Joe?
Correct. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Well, first thing I want to do is I just want to back up real quick and just give some context. This was the tweet, and thank you, Kobe, for bringing this to our attention. Just want to echo everything Brandon said. Doug Bowles, absolutely a class act here, and thankful that Robin's okay. I know her car, unfortunately, is not. But cars can be repaired or replaced. Very grateful that if that accident had happened about 100 yards earlier, we could be having a very different conversation right now. But all credit to Doug Bowles for continuing to be a class act and making sure Robin got taken care of there following that scary, frightening accident with a tire. Now, in regards to the question on Rinus VK here, I know it was certainly a very costly mistake. It also compromised Alex Pillow's race, although he was able to get mostly back up towards the front there at the end and maybe be in the mix a little bit. I don't know that this is one incident where, we start questioning the guy's entire future at Ed Carpenter Racing over it. But, I'm sure the team will have a debrief tonight, try to figure out what happened here. The pits in Indianapolis are very, very narrow. I've got to say, this was not the only incident in the pits that we had this year or any other year. We usually see something, go down in this pit lane here. So again, I'm sure it will be a massive project to try to undertake. But maybe, there's something that IMS can do to look at maybe lengthening or widening, I should say, the pit road a little bit, because it's very tight down there with only a couple of lanes to work with. VK certainly, I think, made a costly mistake, and it compromised both his race and Alex Pillow's race. But again, I don't know that this is something that we put into doubt his entire career over. I'm sure the team will look at it, try to find a way to prevent it going forward. But I think it's basically, that's all you can chalk it up to. It's a racing incident that happened in a very dangerous pit lane, one of the toughest pit lanes in motorsports. I think that's really all there is to it here.
Yeah. Indianapolis definitely is one of the most challenging pit lanes in all of motorsports, with the bed so tight there. And looking at the results for Rinus VK and Alex Pillow to come back finishing inside the top 10, Pillow in the top 5, that's certainly a lot to be proud of. So I guess you can say VK salvaged what could have been a really bad day. A top 10 finish is still better than what he had coming into the Indianapolis 500 this year. And I have to agree, I don't think this one incident would put his future in doubt at Ed Carpenter Racing. It seems like the team is still very committed to him, believe he has a bright future in IndyCar racing, but overall the Ed Carpenter Racing program just hasn't been there, as a whole outside of the Indy 500. So I don't think it's truly fair to judge Rinus VK's talent based on the equipment that he's been given at all other places. But certainly today is a missed opportunity for him. He'll learn from this, put this behind him, and get ready for the next round. We're going to the new street circuit in Detroit next, in the downtown area.
Detroit street circuit next weekend. It's going to be very exciting, and it will be really interesting to see VK, if he can put together a good run and try to rebound, because Indy 500 is behind you now. Try to carry some of that positive momentum, at least establish a decent finish in the Indy 500. Now, something different. There's so many stories from this year's Indianapolis 500 that we haven't even mentioned. We know this is potentially Tony Kanaan's final 500. Graham Rahal, the heartbreaking late start. Paddle Ward saying he's not going to place nice with Marcus Ericsson anymore. Kobe, starting with you, what other storylines jump out from this year's Indianapolis 500?
Well, one storyline that really jumps out to me is actually Scott Dixon coming back to finish in the top 10 during that first run. The car was having such a very vibration on the left side, and and it looked like Dixon was not going to have a good finish at all, because it seemed like that car, he was just struggling with it all day long. But in typical Scott Dixon manner, he was able to methodically work his way back up and still have a solid point stay at the very end. So I really think on days like today, when we add up everything at the end of the season with the championship, we very well may see Scott Dixon in the mix to win this championship once again. And I guess the question I'm gonna pose to y'all: were you surprised that after the horrible start that Dixon had, that he was able to work his way all the way back up to have a solid result today?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I think we're going clockwise, but it shifted for some reason when Joe brought the results up. So go ahead, Brandon.
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't really paying too much attention to Scott Dixon as much as I was Alex Palou's big jump from getting brought down and ended up finishing fourth. I think that was a great result there for him. But yeah, Scott Dixon for the P6 also had the trouble there early. That took a lot there after that vibration on the wing. That looked like he wasn't going to come back from that at all.
Yeah, I thought Dixon, it was going to be a mediocre race. So to see him come back really shows what that Chip Ganassi team potential, and he's never quit attitude. What a recovery. I know he's disappointed, but to come back, top 10, solid effort.
Yeah, I'm looking at several names up here. Scott Dixon, obviously, great to see him come back. And like guys, I was with you. I was thinking that he was probably going to be middle of the pack all race. I know it was still early, but it seemed like a problem that wasn't going to allow him to compete. And he got up there and nearly got a top 5 out of it. His teammate Alex Palou as well, like we just mentioned, having that incident in the pits and being able to recover from that. But how about Santino Ferrucci? I know we don't do a traditional podium ceremony in this race. The winner gets victory lane all to themselves here, but this is a guy that I think has really been one of the feel-good stories with AJ Foyt Racing as a whole this month of May. I know Benjamin Peterson got caught up in one of the many late incidents there, but he had a great month of May as well. And for AJ Foyt, still at 88 years old, to be out there on track in the pit lane, watching his 2 cars out there, and I know it must have been a really good feeling for him to have a car that, had things gone slightly differently, maybe could have won this race. And great job by him and his entire organization, and Santino Ferrucci in particular. A great month of May, and that's something we've come accustomed to saying in his short IndyCar career. He's always had great runs here at IMS. Got to think if he can keep this up, if he stays in IndyCar long enough, he'll get his win one of these days to come.
Yeah, it's something else, Brandon. When it comes to some of the storylines, what jumps out to you?
That was a huge one there. Honestly, was AJ Foyt. The fact that AJ Foyt was there, and just the passion out of Santino Ferrucci at the end there, you could tell they were really wanting more. And also the potential. I think another big story was just the potential for Marcus Ericsson. Really thought he had won the Indianapolis 500. Thought he got the back-to-back and was going to get that Borg Warner bonus that's been piling up since 2002 with Helio Castroneves. So a potential story, I guess you could say, not really a full storyline, but just really the thought of what could have been there for the Swedish driver. And then also the Ray Hall heartbreak at the beginning. There was just so much, as most years are. There was just so many things we could look at as far as storylines. And I definitely think this is Tony Kanaan's final 500. He really was alluding to last year, finishing higher up, it kind of made the question a little more natural. So you going to do it again, TK? But with a P16 finish, it really does seem like he understands. Yeah, I'm pretty much done.
Something else, Ben, when it comes to some of the storylines from Indy, what were some of the stories that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to feel bad for Graham Rahal. That guy's just been through so much in the last 7 days or 8 days, I guess, inclusive, from last Sunday, getting bumped from the 500 and then getting the call up to replace his good friend Stefan Wilson, driving for a completely different manufacturer and being in a completely different foreign environment. and then starting the race 2 laps down. I mean, we could not really have gotten much worse for him. And then, not even getting to finish the race, getting caught up in one of the last incidents there as well. Very, very, very frustrating month to forget for him, and we'll see how he responds here and puts this behind him as he returns to the car that he normally drives for the rest of the season and continues to evaluate his future. But I hope this isn't it for him. I hope he comes back stronger next year and gets another shot at it, because this was certainly a month to forget. And on that note as well, great to see Steph Wilson in the paddock today, and wishing him well as well, and hope that he can get a program put together for next year, because I think that's going to be one of the feel-good stories of 2024 going forward.
And before I get to my question, come with comments in the chat room. Adam, I truly thought Rosenquist or Ward were going to win. Those two were up front for a long time. Those two swapping the lead, it looked like they had it, but then unfortunately they both went out in cautions that brought out the red flags. Give a call to Santino Ferrucci, and this is sort of where I'm leading towards, especially as you mentioned, Brandon, all the stories around AJ Foyt, that miraculous effort. Santino Ferrucci even led the lap. The fans, they were cheering him on because they all also wanted to see AJ Foyt in victory lane. Now, we know before he came to IndyCar, when Santino was coming, he had a very negative reputation in Europe. When he was racing there, Formula 3s, FIA, just a lot of drama, didn't work out. People were questioning, is he good for IndyCar to come here? He's put in his years. He didn't have a full-time season last year, but he always seems to run good at this track. Top 10 finish in every race he's run. And this year, especially with AJ Foyt racing, getting them towards the front, leading the race, fighting for the win. Man, this is something else. So, Kobe, I have to ask you, starting with you. Is Santino Ferrucci finally starting to get redemption from his past? And could today's run even potentially put him in the spot to get another top ride?
Well, Joe, I have to say Santino has never had a top ride to begin with in IndyCar, but I certainly think that based on his performance alone, especially at this track, it could potentially put him in the conversation to drive for some of the big teams at some point in his racing career. But the thing is, you brought up his past, and though I know Santino kind of has some character concerns and an image problem, and we know some people are never going to be able to put his past behind him, no matter what Santino does in the future. Some people have just already made up in their minds that they're not going to give him a second chance, no matter what. Even if he has matured a lot since he was kind of all over the place early on in his racing career, but Santino, wow, his performance at Indianapolis is so incredible. Kind of like when we had Carlos Munoz here, it seemed like no other track on the schedule we saw him perform that well at. Carlos Munoz was always good at IMS. Santino Ferrucci, he showed some signs of brilliance at other IndyCar tracks, but nothing is like IMS. I think at some point, if he continues to stay in the IndyCar series for a longer period of time, we may very well see Santino Ferrucci drinking the milk in victory lane someday.
Yeah, I think Santino Ferrucci is a serious oval driver for IndyCar, and he needs to get some better equipment and fast, because he's bound to get a Borg Warner, I believe, before he's all said and done. I can't. It was one of the unforgettable parts of the 2019 Indy 500, going from 23rd to 7th with Dale Coyne. That was a spectacular run, and one of the slickest looking cars too. And also, you think of last year with I think it was with Ray Hall, Leonard Lanigan, and the high beam machine. He was one of the only guys that had the special darkened aero screen. I think because he said it was something about his eyes or something like that. I don't know if there was truth to that, but he's just this comes from someone that didn't really know anything about his F2 past and all the controversy around that. So when I first knew who Santino was, or Santucci was, in 2019, so that was my first impression of him. So just seeing him in IndyCar, he's he feels like a guy that's got a little bit of an ego, but he goes out there and performs. And I think if he really made AJ Foyt Racing look great today. And I think that had a lot to do with AJ Foyt Racing too, not just Santino Ferrucci, but he's got a lot ahead of him if he can get a good deal going. I think AJ Foyt is a good place to be right now.
Yeah, well, that's exactly where I was going, Brandon. I mean, maybe he's at a top team right now. I mean, it's probably a little bit premature to say that based off of one really good month of May for AJ Foyt Racing, but it would be fantastic if the Foyt name was up there with the Penske's and Ganassis and Andretti's and McLarens of this world. I mean, Foyt is just as equally as much of a legendary name in this sport, and it would be great to see that team up there fighting for wins and championships again. Again, probably a little bit premature to elevate them to that level after just one good month of May here, but Santino Ferrucci might be the guy to take them there. We'll see where his journey goes here with this team. But at the same time, especially when you think of how well he's run at IMS, you got to think maybe some of the bigger teams are, starting to consider if we have an opening, maybe this is a guy that we need to call because he's been absolutely fantastic all month. And again, if things had just played out a little bit differently, maybe we'd be talking about him having won the race today. He was right up there in the mix, and he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Right up there, and some would even say third, second place, the ideal spot on a late restart. I think he is really becoming somebody the fans are really enjoying at Indianapolis. If he and AJ Foyt Racing could keep improving, they could be together again next year. And we saw the pit crew on that last pit stop. That front tire almost got away. It was saved. Penalty coming, but not a race-altering penalty. But that's when I was thinking, oh, no, don't mess this up, because we talked about on Grid Life pre-race this morning that team had to be perfect. Can they handle the pressure? I say overall they did. The emotion from Santino, he really wanted to get that win. There's always next year. Unfortunately, it's the same because the month of May is coming to an end, and Indy 500, I think it's going to be remembered for some hard racing, fast speeds. Unfortunately, this finish is going to be lingering for quite some time, but be sure to subscribe to us here on the Grid Network because we're going to be following it on Grid tonight and all the races throughout the season. Kobe, when it comes to the last Sunday of May, there was another race, and it started off more as a procession, but then it got spicy towards the end, not because of a red flag and controversy, but because of weather.
And before we get into that race, Drew, I wanted to bring up one more point of Santino Ferrucci. It seems like some of the top teams already think very highly of him. You remember last year when Joseph Newgarden had that scary crash in Iowa, who was on standby to replace him in case Newgarden couldn't go? Team Penske called up Santino Ferrucci. So maybe, just maybe, he'll have that opportunity to drive for a top team at some point in his IndyCar career. If anyone wanted to chime in there, I'll let you. Otherwise, I'll move on into Formula One.
Yeah, and a budding Xfinity career. We can't forget that.
Guys have really been everywhere in his young career, I guess. He was the Haas test and reserve driver at one point, and some people thought maybe he'd be the American driver in the American car, and that was maybe going to be the path he went down. Found his way back home to America to do some IndyCar and NASCAR racing. Now here he is with a podium at the Indianapolis 500. So, who knows what the future holds, but I think, Kobe, thank you for bringing that up. I'd forgotten about that. Maybe there's a Penske career in his future. I guess you never know how these things are going to play out sometimes in this sport.
Yeah, we'll certainly be following his career path in the months and years ahead. And now switching gears, the Formula One Monaco Grand Prix kicked off the race day. As we always say, breakfast in Monaco, lunch and dinner, and I guess maybe a late lunch, early dinner tomorrow in Charlotte. And so, Joe, you and Josh said that the start was very critical on this track where overtaking is quite difficult. Max Verstappen led the start and controlled the entire race. Fernando Alonso finished second. However, there was a defining moment when it started to rain. Alonso hadn't pitted yet, and his team put on the intermediates, but it didn't work out. How big of a missed opportunity was this for Aston Martin?
Initially, it looked like it was a huge missed opportunity because Verstappen got the tires that he needed. He was on the hards, went to mediums. The rain's coming. It was that section towards the tunnel after the train stop chicane. It was just one of those things where if he had gone in, got to intermediate, he could have come out and he didn't have the extra stop. But where I think it still becomes more of a hypothetical is because we saw if you came in for the inners, that wasn't good enough. You had to go through the full wets because it was just pouring down rain at that stage. I feel at that point, it could have been one of those deals where if Verstappen had gone in and said, let's go with the full wets, Alonso's in the intermediates, he'll have come back full width. Probably would have worked out the same. So initially, I thought this was just a big missed opportunity for the team. At the end, the way the race played out, I feel, considering everything that worked out, it may have not made that big of a difference.
Yeah, I'm glad the rain came. It certainly added a layer of unpredictability to what usually is a very predictable procession. But I think the biggest missed opportunity for Fernando is, and again, I think he put in a very good lap yesterday. Max Verstappen was unbelievable in the third sector, pulling that out to take pole position. But I think that was probably the missed opportunity there. If Fernando had found a way to start on pole, he probably would have been better positioned to try to take the win today. But Max just had a phenomenal pace in that Red Bull and still won by a very comfortable margin anyway. You can maybe look back and say if we tried something differently, maybe we would have had a different result. But I think, at this point, the Red Bull still has enough pace over the Aston Martin that Max probably would have won regardless of what happened today.
Yeah, for sure. And while it was a potentially costly mistake that saw Aston Martin let a win slip away, Ferrari once again had a horrible race. Carlos Sainz was in fourth place behind Esteban Ocon for the entire race until Ocon made a pit stop. Ocon had a slow 7-second pit stop. Many thought Ferrari would have capitalized. Ferrari called Sainz to pit, had a fast stop, but still lost the position to Ocon. When Sainz asked what happened, the team on the radio said the pit was to cover Hamilton, who was in fifth place. A livid Carlos Sainz expressed anger and disbelief at Ferrari. Then in the rain, he ended up spinning, fell behind Charles Leclerc, and the two were battling each other, entering the pits. Has Ferrari lost control of the situation? And is this problem bigger than just changing team principles?
Yeah, that I really can't say too much on this, as my knowledge on it is a little bleak and narrow. But having seen the event today, that the whole tire strategy for today at Monaco was really even going to the wets. It was still difficult to keep traction going, but I do remember that Ferrari sandwich with Esteban Ocon, and that was just some crazy times. I know Ferrari has just changed their team principle, but it's got to be something much more than that. It's about getting to McLaren level of problems here.
I couldn't believe when I was seeing and hearing you had the opportunity to essentially get around Ocon. He had a slow pit stop, a 7-second pit stop in F1. Here comes Sainz, 3-second pit stop, and Esteban Ocon still gets the front. And when the team said, "Oh, this was to cover Hamilton," he's behind you. You just had another driver who was ahead of you. You could get around. What? I just couldn't understand it, and I could understand how Carlos Sainz was just in disbelief and couldn't believe what he was hearing. You guys are trying to race the Alpine. It was slower. You guys could have gotten around him. Race all went downhill for Carlos Sainz, but I just felt this really showing this is not just a team principle issue. There is just a problem with the culture, the management, the strategy department. There's a bigger problem in Ferrari because it's gone, I think, from comical to, as Ben would say, the Dallas Cowboys of Formula One.
Yes, they are.
This has just turned to a point where it's like you let both drivers down. There's trouble, and I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some infighting, and it's just not good for Ferrari. And I just couldn't believe the situation. I just still in disbelief talking about it.
I think I'm going to have to start saying the Philadelphia 76ers of Formula One as well, based on how my basketball team has been cursed with exiting the second round of 5 of the last 6 years here. But yeah, no, Joe, we've talked about this countless times on this show before. This is something that is far deeper than just changing team principles. This goes back to Maranello, back to Ferrari's base, and back to 2008, if you want to be quite honest. This team right now is not a world championship caliber team. They haven't been for many years now. And I think that if we want to be honest with ourselves, the name Aston Martin doesn't have as much prestige in Formula One history as Ferrari does. But if we're talking about a big three right now, you can't leave Aston Martin out of it, and you can't put Ferrari in it. I mean, this team is so far behind the 8 ball. I know we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but there's no way they're challenging Red Bull this year. There was no way they were going to challenge Red Bull last year, despite the fact that they started the season apparent to be on equal pace with Red Bull, and still found a way to really not make that championship very close. I mean, it was a closer battle for second with Mercedes, with a car that was the worst car Mercedes had put together in the turbo hybrid era. So this is a team that needs a culture change beyond just the one person in charge in the team principal position. And today was only further proof of that, because like you said, Joe, I don't even know what to make of it anymore. I mean, this is just, we come to expect it almost every race, that something's going to go wrong for this team that leaves us scratching our heads. And I think the entire strategy department, as we've been saying for years, needs to be overhauled, because to be quite frank, I don't know that they necessarily know what they're doing all the time.
Yeah, Ben, and even lately, like this season, even that third spot in the big three could actually be contested. Like, you got Red Bull, obviously number one. You got Aston Martin, which really has been showing their number two so far this 2023 campaign. And then honestly, for me, it's hard to put Mercedes in number three. We want to, I mean, but they're not weekly. I mean, not each event consistently showing that they deserve to be there. It's kind of a toss up, depending on where you're going to. With Lewis Hamilton and
George Russell,
yeah, George Russell. Mine just goes blank when I talk Formula One for some reason on the camera. But that Monaco, they should be catching up to Red Bull, but it's just so narrow. And we talked about it on Encore too, just how wide they are, how long they are. It makes it tough for those streets that have been there for so long. The car's obviously not the same, but I really thought the rain was going to shake things up, and hopefully, it was obviously giving Verstappen some trouble. So hopefully it was going to, help some of these other teams at least catch them a break. But.
Yeah, well, I must admit, I'm not quite as familiar in this day and age as I was a few years ago with all the technicalities of each of the Formula One cars. I know back in 2017, the last time we had major regulation change, that Mercedes, I think, had a little bit of a longer wheelbase distance between the front and rear tires, and that made Monaco a challenge for them. And Ferrari ended up getting a 1-2 that day with Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen. But I don't see Ferrari. I don't think we're going to go to Monza, which is a very power unit dependent track, and see them take the fight to Red Bull there. And then on the tightest, twistiest circuit in the calendar here at Monaco, they were nowhere to be seen either. So I don't think there's any particular track where you can look at as a strength right now for Ferrari. I think they have a lot of work to do. And like I said, they've had a lot of work to do for the last 15 years, because that's the last time they were, to be quite honest, really even close to a championship. I know Fernando Alonso dragged a couple of cars that should not have been in contention for championships, maybe to be on the brink of fighting Sebastian Vettel for one. And then Vettel got in that car and kind of flexed his muscles for a couple of years in 2017, 2018. But again, by the end of the season, it was clear Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton were ahead. So this team's got a lot of work to do, and just changing the team principal in one offseason clearly has not fixed everything.
Yeah, I'm convinced Alonso as a driver is a car upgrade to any car you put him in on the grid.
For sure.
Yeah, and we always talk about overhauling the strategy department at Ferrari, but honestly, they need to overhaul absolutely every department inside of Maranello right now, and it just blows my mind. We've been we've been having the same conversation about Ferrari over and over and over again for so many years, and nothing changes. I wonder when something will finally change. Once upon a time ago, whenever a driver entered Formula One, Ferrari would be one of those teams that you would dream of going to. Given the current situation and culture over there right now, I don't even know why anyone would want to drive for Ferrari, if I'm being completely honest, until we've seen a change, and we know for the Ferrari brand there's a prestige there and a high standard, and the team right now is not meeting that at all. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of frustrations from Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz as well. Who knows? Maybe in the next few years or so, they'll start looking elsewhere. I know there's been rumors that were addressed in the paddock this week about Ferrari offering Lewis Hamilton a contract and potentially like doing a swap-a-roo with Hamilton going to Ferrari and Charles Leclerc going to Mercedes. But honestly, given the situation, it would not surprise me if we see Charles Leclerc decide to move on to another team. And looking at the Monaco Grand Prix as a whole, it was the usual procession until the rain showed up. Everyone's waiting for the rain, hoping that it would at least make the race a little more exciting, but in the end, it was still another win for Max Verstappen. Red Bull remains undefeated in 2023. Max has extended his lead over the field, with Sergio Perez finishing outside of the points. Not a good weekend at all for the driver who is proclaimed to be king of the streets. And and Max Verstappen, he has a 39-point lead over second place, so he won't risk losing the lead at the next race if something goes wrong. Perez is only 12 points ahead of Fernando Alonso in third. Lewis Hamilton is fourth, 75 points behind Verstappen. Josh said the field should be catching up to Red Bull, but the way it looks, is there anyone who can challenge them, or should the other teams already start thinking about 2024?
I think if Joshua, he said, we're going to see upgrades. The competition is going to get more intense, closer to Red Bull. Red Bull can't make the upgrades. I'll get, I think, Alonso up there, but I just don't see, especially Ferrari. I have no confidence that they're going to be contending week after week with Red Bull. Mercedes, maybe, but that's still a big maybe. There's just some races where they just don't seem to show up. And then we see what's happening with Aston Martin. It's Fernando Alonso that's really carrying that team. Lance Stroll, not a great day at all. So overall, I think the competition could get closer. But Sergio Perez, he doesn't have the consistency. Just hero one weekend, nothing the next weekend. Max Verstappen, first, second. I still think he's going to potentially be podium in every race. I think the big thing is he keeps up that consistency. He's not going to be beat. I'm leaning towards the idea he probably has one hand on that championship.
Yeah, there's no way Ferrari are going to catch him. I don't think there's any way Mercedes are going to catch him. I think the closest team and really the closest driver, I think, Lance Stroll's even trailing Fernando Alonso a little bit. I think Alonso's really the only one, and maybe he'll win a couple of races this year. I'm not convinced Red Bull's going to carry this perfect season all the way through. But in terms of the Constructors' Championship, that fight is, I think, well done and dusted at this point. You might as well start engraving Red Bull's name now. And I think, to be honest, after this weekend, we call Sergio Perez the king of the streets. He made a very costly error yesterday and cost him a day in the race, obviously. I think Verstappen's got one hand on a trophy, like you were mentioning, Joe.
Yeah, certainly. I don't really have much to add there, and I totally agree with you, Ben. I think it's time to start engraving the Red Bull name on the Constructors' Trophy, and I also think that at the end of the day, Max Verstappen is going to end up taking home this championship because Sergio Perez has not shown us that he can truly challenge Max and get ahead of him and truly contend for the wins. Max is all the way up there. Sergio is basically next best, and he's gonna have to step it up 2 notches if he wants any shot at winning this drivers' championship. But in regards to the competition, I think it's pretty much over for the rest of them. But Ben, I do think at some point later this season we're gonna see Red Bull, both Verstappen and Perez, run into some bad luck, and we could see the other teams be able to capitalize on this. We very well could see Fernando Alonso and the Aston Martin that's been running so well this year potentially win for the first time in a very long time. It's been a long time since we've seen Fernando on the top step of the podium.
Yeah, and Kobe as well. It's not just the Red Bull. I think Max Verstappen, he showed it in qualifying yesterday. He showed it in 2021. I think that Mercedes was still just a tiny little bit faster. They ended up winning the Constructors as well. Valtteri Bottas beat out Sergio Perez that year. Even if Aston Martin catches Red Bull, I think Max Verstappen is just as a driver on a completely different level right now. And I think that might continue to elevate where Red Bull is in the championship. And by the time Aston Martin closes the gap, if they can, Max will probably have an insurmountable lead anyway. But I think that they're just on another planet right now, and the rest of the field's trying to catch up. I think they're going to have to wait until 2024 until they can really mount a true challenge here. But enough about that. Let's get into the one shining moment from this weekend. I suppose the weekend isn't quite over yet. We got some NASCAR racing still to go tomorrow, but I will throw it over to my encore partner in crime here as well, Brandon Crossland. Rare opportunity for you to be on the wrap-up show. I want to give you a chance to put it out there for anything that you've seen this weekend in the world of motorsports. What is your one shining moment from this greatest weekend in racing?
Putting it all together, there's a lot of controversy behind it and a lot of things we've been talking about all show long. But I've got to give it to Roger Penske, Tim Cindric, and Joseph Newgarden, that trio there. Three gentlemen that are probably having a time of their life right now, celebrating today. And I guess it's easy bait to take the Indy 500 win as the one shining moment, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's the one shining moment. Finally gets that Borg Warner in his trophy case and can basically hang up your career. You can say you've done it, you've seen it all, done it all. And Roger Penske gets one closer to Borg Warner number 20.
And I actually have two one shining moments. I tried to narrow it down to one, but I have to do both. First one I'm going to do is AJ Foyt Racing. They've had a spectacular month of May. It's unfortunate Benjamin Peterson didn't get the finish that he wanted today, but Santino Ferrucci, that number 14 Chevrolet, it's been amazing all month long. And I remember entering the Indianapolis Motor Speedway festivities this month. I was thinking that Santino's top 10 Indy 500 finishing streak was gonna come to an end because AJ Foyt Racing hasn't really shown a lot of pace at all their places, and then they showed speed in practice, and then that fast lap by Santino in qualifying to making it into the fast 12, and then having a shot to win the pole as well. It really surprised me to see how AJ Foyt Racing, which seems to have invested all of his resources into the month of May, and as I said earlier, rightfully so, because the results were able to speak itself with Santino's great performance. We'll see if they're able to build off this momentum, have a good race at Detroit, and see what the rest of the season has for them. And seeing AJ Foyt there was really special. You know, AJ is getting up there in age, and most recently he's lost his wife as well. We don't know how much longer we're going to have AJ here with us, and for him to be at the track to see his car in contention for the win, that certainly has a very special feeling. And my second one shining moment has to go to Doug Bowles, the IMS track president, for what he did to his woman named Robin Matthews, who lost her Chevy Cruze, which she named Snowball. Yeah, Doug was just very classy to offer her a ride home and to bring her out onto the track after the race and let her kiss the yard of bricks. It shows you the class act that Doug Bowles is, and I'm sure that's a moment that Robin is never going to forget.
Never going to guess that Indy 500. I think for sure all the fans, especially with AJ Foyt having a car contending for the win, they're never going to forget that as well. My shining moment is going to come from Formula One Monaco. I'm giving it to Alpine and Esteban Ocon getting third place finish. It's been public how Alpine had been struggling. They had not been delivering. Team, I could have easily spiraled into a negative with that kind of public outburst from their leader saying, we're not delivering, we're not executing, we're failing. That team, they seem to got it together this weekend at Monaco. Yes, we know Monaco is hard to pass, so once you're in third place, good luck getting around you. They had that mess up in the pits, but still, unfortunately, Ferrari did what Ferrari does, and they still were ahead of Ferrari. Essentially, they were the ones that Carlos Sainz got to the point where he started making mistakes, losing it. Esteban Ocon, third place finish, another podium for him. Of course, he has that one win already. I have to say, Alpine, for their 50th F1 race, as Alpine to get a podium, that is my one shining moment.
All right, I had 4 one shining moments I was going to pick from. Brandon took 1, Kobe took 2, and Joe took my last one. So I don't know what I'm going to go with here. Again. I guess I'll think about the guy that finished in second today. And of course, when you think of the Indy 500, you always feel a little bit bad for the driver who came in second, and particularly today, I think Marcus Ericsson certainly has a right to feel like it wasn't the fairest of outcomes based on how race control decided to call the end of this race, but he can still hold his head high and take a lot of pride in how well he ran today and prove that last year was no fluke. Brandon, like you mentioned, there was that tremendous bonus on the table for him if he could pull this off and go back to back, which nobody's done since Elio, the turn of the millennium here. But Marcus is somebody that we need to talk about now as a serious star of the INDYCAR series and somebody that is going to be here contending for wins and championships here for years to come if he decides to stay in the INDYCAR series and make it his home for the long run. He put on another tremendous run today, had things ended slightly differently. I think we all thought he might have had the race won at one point, but you can still take a lot of pride in how he ran today if you're at number 8 team with Ganassi, and I'm going to make that one my one shining moment, seeing how he backed up what he did last year and came within just whatever it was, less than a tenth of a second, I think, of doubling down and winning it again this year.
Very close finish. Definitely. It's really interesting how Marcus Ericsson gone from, good race, top 10, podium, to now he's going out there for wins. It's really been impressive. Great one shine moment. And we want to thank everyone for tuning in to today's show. Big thank you for our Patreons for investing in us, keeping us on the air, and for everyone that buys us a coffee as well. Link in the video description to both options to invest in the Grid Network. We hope you do so because we love doing this for you, the viewers, and definitely would like to be at more tracks. Big race weekend coming up for us, so hit that bell icon, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Grid Ranking will be released Monday after the Coca-Cola 600. GridRanking.com. Matthew's going to have his article. We're going to have another article, of course, coming up this week with F1. A lot to discuss, and of course, a busy race weekend in Portland, our backyard right here. And then, of course, tomorrow, NASCAR Cup Series race will be going on. So it's going to be Grid Encore on Tuesday to recap the Cup Series. Plus, we're going to have Joshua for F2, F3, all the races. And we're probably going to hear a little bit about Joshua's opinion on the Indianapolis 500 as well. Plenty of racing still left on this Memorial Day weekend. We thank everyone for tuning in. For Brandon Crossland, Kobe Lambs from the Podium Finish, and Ben Schneider, I'm Joe San Diego. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races on Monday tomorrow. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.